This is not a routine rotation. This is not a drill display. This is an unprecedented military action by the United States Air Force, deploying 30 units of the F-22 Raptor Stealth Fighter, the pinnacle of low observable technology, stealth, to a covert base in Poland just a few miles from the Russian border with speed and absolute secrecy. These air superiority machines, landing under the cover of darkness, completely invisible to civilian radar, were designed to send an unmistakable message to Moscow. This marks one of the deepest shifts in U.S. strategy, moving from an emphasis on deterrence with long-range missiles to a direct ground-level threat projection against Russian military operations. The trigger behind this stunning strategic move was Russia's reckless crossing of a red line. Immediately following the recently concluded Zapad 2025 joint Russian-Belarusian exercise, which caused great concern along NATO's borders, a Russian Su-34 fighter jet, taking off from Belarusian airspace, briefly infiltrated Lithuanian airspace and dangerously approached a NATO reconnaissance aircraft J-Stars operating in the region. Although the intrusion lasted only minutes, the attempt to lock onto the NATO aircraft with its EEW, electronic warfare system, was regarded by Washington as a direct and deliberate act of provocation, challenging NATO's air sovereignty. The U.S. response was instantaneous and overwhelming. The deployment of 30 F-22 Raptors instantly nullified Russia's attempted A2/AD anti-access/area denial strategy in the region. The Raptors, as the world's most advanced fighter jet, are not only capable of shooting down any Russian aircraft, but also possess the ability to penetrate and blind Russia's sensitive command and control C2 networks. This is a shift from static deterrence to active forward-deployed air superiority threat. This covert operation was executed via a continuous aerial chain of C-17 Globemaster III transport aircraft completed within 3 days. These logistical behemoths landed at the forward operating site in Poland, offloading hundreds of highly trained technicians and pilots, along with tons of ordnance and spare parts. The tactical significance of this deployment is devastating for Russia. The presence of the F-22 Raptors effectively means a no-fly zone has been declared over the Baltic Sea. Russian aircraft like the Su-35 and even the purported Su-57 are technologically a generation behind the Raptors. The Raptor's greatest advantage is that its low observable technology not only minimizes its radar cross-section, but also shields the aircraft's electronic signals, rendering it virtually immune to hostile electronic warfare systems. This seriously challenges the effectiveness of Russia's most trusted A2/AD shield, the S-400 missile batteries. The S-400 will struggle to detect the F-22 at long range, providing the U.S. with the ability to destroy Russia's ground-based air defense network at a time and place of its choosing, utilizing AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles. The U.S. has strategically placed Kaliningrad and the military buildup in Belarus under the constant threat of an invisible and lethal strike. Beyond air combat, the F-22 will also function as an advanced reconnaissance platform, relaying the coordinates of critical Russian C2 command and control centers to other NATO strike assets, such as Tomahawk cruise missiles. The new front of psychological warfare. The deployment has exerted immense psychological pressure on Russian military commanders. Any Russian air operation now faces the risk of an instantaneous death blow from the air, one they cannot detect. This situation forces Russia to divert significant resources to security and surveillance along the border, further draining their already stretched resources. The tactical game has become a high-stakes, real-time chess match where one misstep could have catastrophic consequences. The reaction from Moscow has been a blend of fury, urgency, and denial. The Kremlin immediately accused the U.S. of preparing the ground for a direct military intervention, and state media launched a disinformation campaign portraying the deployment as a provocative act of aggression by NATO. However, behind the rhetoric, the Russian military is on high alert. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned the U.S. ambassador to deliver a formal protest, stating that this action escalated the risk of global conflict to unacceptable levels. The Baltic Fleet has mobilized EW, electronic warfare units, to jam NATO communications, and unconfirmed reports suggest additional S-400 units are being rushed to Kaliningrad. This indicates Russia is attempting an asymmetric response against the U.S. air superiority, division within the NATO alliance, the eastern flank, Poland, Baltic states. These countries enthusiastically welcomed the S as a strong, tangible sign of American commitment. The president of Lithuania called the deployment the strongest guarantee for the sovereignty of our airspace. The western flank, Germany, France. These key allies are apprehensive. Diplomatic sources within NATO report that Berlin and Paris conveyed their objections to Washington, arguing that placing Raptors so close to the border significantly increases the risk of a miscalculation that could drag the entire alliance into an unintended war. They stress that deterrence must be carefully calibrated to avoid pushing Russia into a corner. This internal debate deepens the chronic division over how to confront the Russian threat. China's cautious response. The People's Republic of China, which partners with Russia in various regions, issued a more measured statement. Beijing urged all parties to exercise restraint while condemning the U.S. move as a return to a Cold War mentality. China's primary concern is that the U.S. has proven its willingness to use such overwhelming force so close to its rivals, a development that will undoubtedly force Beijing to reevaluate its military planning concerning the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. The landing of 30 F-22 Raptors on Polish soil is the most geopolitically transformative move since the start of the conflict. The U.S. is not only talking about deterrence, but demonstrating a willingness to use force that rewrites the rules of engagement. The true goal: reasserting global hegemony. The actual strategic objective of this maneuver extends far beyond routine air security. Washington is using the F-22s to show Russia that in the age of great power competition, air superiority is non-negotiable. The goal is threefold. 1. To fracture the Russian A-2/A-D strategy, fundamentally eliminating Russia's ability to keep NATO out of Eastern Europe. 2. To reassert NATO leadership, to definitively prove that the U.S. is the ultimate military guarantor of the alliance, despite the concerns of its hesitant European partners. 3. To secure energy infrastructure, to ensure the protection of critical energy infrastructure, pipelines, LNG terminals in the Baltic region from Russian threats. The possible outcomes of this high-tension moment are critical for global stability. The world is walking on a knife's edge. Best-case scenario: zero-risk victory. The invisible threat of the Raptors forces Moscow to reconsider its strategy and withdraw its most aggressive elements. This would represent a successful strategic victory where the threat of force, rather than its use, achieves a decisive political objective. Worst-case scenario: accidental catastrophe. In the highly charged environment of EW and continuous surveillance, a single faulty GPS signal, a misidentified radar signature, or the split-second reflex of a Russian pilot re-entering NATO airspace could trigger an instantaneous retaliation. Because the F-22s are designed as a quick reaction force, the decision-making cycle is shortened, leaving little room for diplomatic restraint. Such a minor incident could rapidly escalate into a full-scale conflict, triggering NATO's Article 5. The silent presence of 30 F-22 Raptors on Russia's doorstep is chilling proof that the world has entered a new and unpredictable era. The world is watching with bated breath to see if this unprecedented display of air supremacy will ultimately bring regional stability or trigger a global catastrophe. Tensions have never been higher, and the world is breathing under a nuclear shadow.